Peter, welcome to the Brand Builders Lab podcast.
I am so excited. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. I literally just said to you, and I shared this, I think, on my stories as well, where I thought I really want to have like some dynamic people on the podcast in March. I want to talk about sales and money and all the juicy things. And I was trying to think of who to ask. I had one other person that I was thinking of, and then you popped up in my LinkedIn. It was totally the best timing. And I was like, of course, I need to speak to you about sales and money because I love that you talk about this a lot.
I think it's so important. Like, I think we forget that sales comes before the service. And I know for me, I always was like, why am I quiet? I'm so good at what I do. And I'm like, yeah, because you have to sell. You have to sell it. And I think we forget that.
Lesson number one. Yes. And I think a lot of people struggle with that as well because sometimes we're like, but I'm really good. Like, I know I'm really good. Do I actually need to tell people? Like, how embarrassing that I need to tell people that I'm really good at what I do.
I think it also comes like down to, you open reels and you see content where people are like, if you have a no-brainer offer, it will just sell. And I think that this gets really incredible service providers and business owners in this mentality of, well, I just need to obsess about making this the perfect offer. But it's not the case. Otherwise, there wouldn't be people that were terrible at what they do that were so busy and booked out. And it's because they're actually amazing salespeople.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Okay, cool. We're going to get into all of it. But
Yeah.
listen, for my audience that don't know you, where have you been? But tell us a bit about you and how you got here and what you do.
Well, hello, everyone. I'm Peta Saris. I'm the founder of Professional Babe, giver of good email, host of the Business Bundle podcast. I've been in business. Oh my gosh, it's going to be 17 years in June. Isn't that wild? 17 years. I'm
That
like a
is
business
crazy.
geriatric. Someone's going to have to get me a walking frame. Like, where's my Lifetime Achievement Award? Now, I didn't start out doing this. I
Yeah.
actually started out with a Pilates studio in my hometown of Maitland. And I grew that business, scaled it online, created a Pilates DVD, again, geriatric
Wow.
business owner. Like, who has a fitness DVD? Serious, I also had television commercials.
Oh my God.
You're
I'm so
really
here
showing my
for it.
age.
I love it. I'm so here for it. It's so good. So good. You've been around, you've seen it all.
I've seen it all. And I think this is where, and I know we've had conversations in the past about this around how I think sometimes business owners really have this reluctance to sell because you used to sell on the phone. Was that?
Yes. Yeah,
Yes.
my first job was Coles, but then my next job was that I was on a telemarketing company, motor neuron disease. So collecting money for charity
Yeah.
was like my first job out of after Coles.
Yeah. And that's a tough gig on the
That's
phone.
hardcore.
Yeah. You just
Yeah.
threw yourself in.
Yeah. But you know something, and I think this is the interesting thing. You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
Like, you don't know that it's hard when you've not been in sales before or you've not tried to sell anything. Somebody was just like, here's the script. These are people that have donated before. Like, we've got targets where we want to raise this amount of money. And I think the one thing that I just really learned from that job was the more that I could get them to tell me why they cared and like why it affected them or why they had donated, I was like one of the top salespeople. Not because I was trying to sell, but because I was listening.
Mhm.
And so then it just was automatic for them to want to give again. So, yeah, so many lessons from, yeah. And then I was in recruitment and sales and all the rest of it. But yeah, so interesting. I actually really love sales.
I love it too. If I'm ever in a bad mood or I'm upset, I'm like, you just need to sell something and you'll feel a little better.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, when you get a sale, you're like, "Yeah, it's so good."
Yeah,
Yeah. So
exactly.
tell me about your sales journey. So when you started the Pilates studio and your DVDs, which I love, like what was your go-to? How were you getting people in?
So I put an ad in the newspaper, which it's really funny now. You see people obsess about Instagram captions. And I remember walking into the Maitland Mercury with my mum, and they gave me this little bit of paper. Mum and I had an argument because I had to write down, and I have like, she says I have really messy handwriting. She's like, they're going to make a mistake. And I'm writing this ad at the counter, and then my mum had to rewrite it because she's like, "There's gonna be a typo or something." And it's so funny that back what you said is like, you don't know what you don't know. I was like, "Oh, I'll put an ad in the newspaper. I'll just walk in and do it. I'm on the way to the shops. This feels like a good idea." And I think it was $50 and I got one sale and I actually ended up having to refund it. So then after that, I was like, right, we're going to have to change the market. Like I was an ex cheerleader who had opened a Pilates studio in my regional town. So I'm like, where is my market? I'm like, MySpace. And that's how I started. And I also was doing outreach at the Belmore, which was our local pub on a Friday night. So I was telling everyone, I'm like, you have to come to my Pilates classes. I
Wow.
was, was telling everyone. And that's really how it started. It's so interesting because I was actually in the Maitland Business Chamber magazine because no one was doing social media marketing back then. It's like if you had a business, you would advertise in like a traditional way. You would put like a television commercial, radio, print, or there was flyers. So the
What
fact,
year are we talking?
oh gosh, 2009.
Okay, so I mean, social media started
Yeah.
in 2004-ish.
Yep.
Yeah,
But no one
okay.
was really doing it. Like
Well,
it
you had
was
MySpace. Yeah.
yeah, so I was on MySpace and then I think it was that year that people were moving across to Facebook.
Mhm.
I started, if there's one thing I regret, it's so do you ever look back and you just have these huge business regrets? I would have had one of the first Pilates groups because I was like, let's start. It was like a page and then they changed it to a group. And I was like, that could have had millions of people. Uh,
I could
and
do a whole podcast on
yeah.
business regrets, but we're not gonna go there. Yeah.
So, and it's really interesting that it's kind of, it's changed over time. But I found back then I could get by doing the same thing for about a year or two. When now I feel like that stuff back then had a lot more longevity in approach, when now you continually need to innovate. And I think that's where a lot of people are finding it a bit more challenging because, everything changes so quickly. Like you look at all the features that have now been added to Instagram, we've got threads, we have TikTok, like there's always a new platform or the platform has a new feature. And I think because of that, we actually need to continually adapt our approach and how we're actually approaching sales in our business.
Yeah. Well, we have to continue because obviously you're not doing Pilates anymore.
I'm not doing Pilates anymore.
So then what happened?
Oh, like after Pilates?
Yeah.
Okay, so then I started a side gig when I had my studio, which is so funny that I had a business. I'm like, let me start a side business. I'm not busy enough, and it was called Professional Babe. And I wanted an outlet to write about all of the, as my friend said, all the vapid shit that you like talking about, which was like looking hot and food and skincare and modeling and beauty. And I loved it. I actually went to France on an all expenses paid trip to write about micellar water of all things. Is that so weird when you tell people that? They look at me like it's made up.
It's so good. Yeah. Love it.
And then in that, I was
So was it
writing.
a blog?
Yeah, it was a blog, and
Okay.
I had a YouTube channel.
I
And then I was writing articles for magazines. So that was Pilates based articles. I sold my business in 2017, ended up in a pyramid scheme. And it's really funny that I actually really was great at the pyramid scheme because I was amazing at sales.
yeah.
Like that network marketing is all sales and it's people that do very well in that. They actually approach it with a sales mentality where if your sales aren't where they need to be at the end of month, you're not getting bonus and then it expires. And some people that's thrilling. I was one of those people. Some people hated it.
Mm.
And I worked out in that, the company like is very old school with how they do things. It's also very Americanized. And for me, I'm like, no, I need to get out there. I need to be teaching as many workshops as possible. And I'd created tools for myself in the way of email automations to onboard new customers that would then, be educated about everything that we learned in class. If they wanted to host a class, here's what they needed to know. And it really mapped out this perfect customer journey. And I found myself all of a sudden being really quiet because everyone was nurtured and they were buying from email, which freed my time up to travel Australia wide. It's how I ended up in Melbourne teaching classes. And people were like, how are you building a business like this? Your output is just phenomenal. And I ended up selling my templates and people had amazing experience with that. I created a course called The Social Sell, which was about like social media marketing and selling. And that really formed the business that I have today. So I rebranded Professional Babe, turned that into a consultancy because I had like all the trademark and the domain and everything. And the people that I met in network marketing were my first clients. And they are so loyal that I've had some of them, and this was back in 2020, that have returned to me now because they're like, the results that you gave me back then and the advice has really it hasn't changed so much. I feel like now when we have a lot of trends, it's like something that is always going to be true is good business advice. And then like I always come back to the advice that you told me because it still to this day works.
How did you know to write the emails to automate when you were in the MLM?
It's so funny because when I had my Pilates studio, I did nothing with email. I hated it. I hated it because I'd spent all this time writing a newsletter. It feels like it would take me a whole day. And then 5 people had unsubscribed. And I'm like, fuck, it's like, I don't want to keep doing this. This is really bad ROI, right? Like you got 50 classes a week. I've got like 130 regulars. I've got this side business and I'm spending a whole day writing this newsletter that looks like shit. But with network marketing, I would travel every week because I worked out, I was like, this is really fun because if I travel to Brisbane for work, it's tax deductible. And that's why I loved it because I'm like, I can go everywhere that I want to go. I just need to teach a couple of essential oil workshops. But because I had such a good sales process, like I was like, look, this is going to be an incredible workshop. Some of you are going to buy. Some of you are just here because your aunties made you come. Some of you are like, what is this pyramid scheme? I'm really scared. Like, and I would really lean into it and I would address everyone in the room. And I had incredible sales because I think I was like, let's kind of just poke fun at this, but let's also meet the needs of the people who are very serious about how lemon oil is going to change their lives. And I would walk away from a weekend with like sometimes 20 customers, which was a lot. And I was like, there is no way that I can invite people and organize my next workshop and travel and keep on top of all of my customer work. So for me, what I did, I mapped out what was happening currently and then what I wanted to happen. And I worked out that every client came to me with the same questions after. They're like, I've ordered. When do you think it's going to be here? Where's the postman going to leave it? Like stuff like that. Like, and back then people were ringing me on my phone. So I would be on the phone all day, feeling like that I was answering 20 of the same questions. And what happened is when I automated this, when, someone would buy, I would put their order in on the doTERRA website, and then I would add them into this email automation. And it was really simple. I think it was like 8 emails. So once a week, they'd get an email and it would really address all of the questions that they had ahead of time. So if I found that people were asking me something around like day 7 to 10, great, let's send them an email on day 5. And then what happened from there is they all thought I was psychic because they're like, I was just thinking this. But I had at this stage, I think maybe over 200 customers before I implemented this. And I noticed that sometimes you get a really random outlier question that I'd be like, I don't even know where you got that from, but sure, I'll answer. But most people had the same questions. And it was something where for me, I was like, I didn't really know if it was going to work, but I was like, I have to try something because I'm exhausted and I'm working so much. And I'm also like, I just want to sell.
Yeah.
I want to be teaching workshops and I want to sell. And it worked. It worked actually better because I found that I could get in this really good sales energy and I could write these emails and have them send out. And it's like I wasn't having someone ring me when I was in the middle of something or in the grocery store or in a bad mood. So I found because of that and because these emails were crafted in that energy, I had time to check them. They converted really well. And if they didn't, I would just change them and just tweak them a little. So if I found people were asking me questions, say maybe on week 3, I'm like, oh, okay, cool. How can we address that in like week 2's email? And it did so well. It actually scared me because all of a sudden my phone, it's like I'd had all these workshops on the weekend. Monday rolled around and my phone didn't ring. And I was freaking out. I was like, oh my God, I bet they've rung head office and everyone wants a refund. And I was just checking in with a couple. They were like, oh my God, I love that email you sent. Thank you so much. I was wondering how I could log in and check out those products you said. And then it was like, oh, okay, cool. So what was really nice is I obviously had this in-person approach where I was selling in person. But then the secondary effect was the fact that I cloned myself that people loved and I put that in the emails. So it was like that they were sent for me, which they were. People knew that they could hit reply and they were still going to get me. If they had a question, they could still ring me. And it helped me really grow my business. Think I had over 500 personal customers, which is high. Like, I think I had a doctor's clinic at Monash IVF that was one of my customers because I'm like, I want to go corporate. I'm like, we're going to do this.
Why not?
I actually even had a coffee with one of the people that was in sales at Virgin. And I'm like, how can we get the essential oils on the plane? And she was like, look, I don't know if we can do that, but I want to be one of your customers.
I love it. I love it. You can sell ice to Eskimos. So good. So good. And so getting into your business now, we were talking just before we kicked off, is that what are you seeing when it comes to selling in 2025? I almost said 2024. What are you seeing that's shifting? What are your
Mm.
customers talking to you about around the sales landscape right now?
I think that a lot of people are selling reactively. And I think this is where, especially if anyone started a business around COVID, like around 2020, it was easier because everyone was moving online. And if you were good at online business, you knew that you could create content, you had an advantage of all of the business owners that had an in-person presence that didn't really have that skill set. And then I think what happened is as we were getting out of that, probably towards like 2022, 2023, people were like, oh, this is hard. And it was interesting for me, and maybe you found this as well because you've been in business for a while. I'm like, well, this isn't hard. It's back to normal a bit. We dipped down a little, but then it's like we've kind of just leveled out to how things were with the studio. And I think now something that I'm seeing is people think that one, they can just have like a one channel approach. So it's like, great, I'm just going to post on Instagram and that's how I'm going to sell. And the problem is with that, anytime that you have an algorithm that you have to battle, it's like, this is your livelihood. It's not a hobby. It's not something that it doesn't matter if it doesn't do well, especially if you're living off your business. You need to make sure that you are safeguarding that. And I think that we have some people that have put all of their eggs in the Instagram basket. And now they're like, oh my gosh, I can't sell. And then they're like, let me just invest all of this time and money in Facebook ads. Or let me just invest all of this here. So I'm seeing that happen. I'm seeing people kind of accept how things are because they're like, oh, I put a post out on Instagram and people didn't buy. Oh, well, no one wants it. And it's so funny for me hearing this because I'm like, you just need to be a bit more proactive. So, what I think is working well now is people that have a genuine care for their customers and they're happy to do a little bit more groundwork. And this is, I know you mentioned on your Instagram the other day that you message people that on your new followers on Instagram. And does that work well for you? Like doing that?
Yeah, but
Because
I'm
no one
also
does it.
yeah, because I think, you know something? I just Instagram for me is my primary platform. I do post in other places. And I've said this to clients before. It's like stories. Like people who follow me, people who are there, I just see them as my community. When I get on stories in the morning, I'm not getting on to post content. I'm getting on to say hi. Like I'm like, "Morning, how you doing? This is what's happening." It's as if I met you for coffee. It's what I would sort of say. So
Mm,
when somebody follows me, I don't take that for granted. I'm just like, "Hey, thanks so much for the follow." And then I'll usually offer them something like I've got a stories prompt at the moment that's free. Obviously, because I want a list build. I'm not stupid. Like I'm on Instagram to attract a community and clients.
yeah.
So I'm like, but it's permission marketing as well, where I'm like, I've got this free story prompt. If it's something of interest, let me know. But so great to have you here. And
Yeah.
then they tell me if they want it. And if they do, I'll send it.
Yeah. I love that. And what I think I like about that is I think that, a lot of people approach sales reactively and they're like, let me put this out and let me kind of see who's interested. And then I'll send them the link. And I think in some ways, like everyone's using ManyChat. And I think it is amazing to automate a lot of what's happening in business. But I think sometimes, and I don't know if you're finding this, people are skipping over these core skills of actually learning how to have a conversation and be a real, authentic person and develop that connection. Because I think that people think that they can bypass that. It's like, oh, let me put up a post and you just need to comment this and then it'll send through. And I don't have to have a conversation. And they probably tell themselves if this person has a question, they'll just write back. But sometimes people don't. They and I think especially if you're in the B2B space, I think a lot of people have been burned by working with people that have had a really beautiful, shiny online presence. And then when they've had an actual dealing with the person, they're like, oh, this isn't what I thought it would be.
Mm.
And what I like about what you've done, you've shown what it is like to work with you and the fact that you are a caring and attentive person. So it's like this beautiful preview. Like, yes, there is an agenda, getting people on your mailing list, but they're going to know what it's like to work with you. And I'm the same. I'm a fan of like sliding in with a bit of a voice message.
Yeah.
I even always say, hey, if this has wrecked your day, if you're someone that hates voice messages, I'm so sorry. I'll PayPal you for a cup of coffee. Like I make a joke about
Yeah.
it because I'm like, if people don't even like that, they're gonna hate working with me because
I
that's kind of
agree.
yeah,
Yeah. Because that's you.
me. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so
Um,
good. I mean, when you're like, what's your primary platforms? I know obviously email is your go to,
yeah,
but what are you doing online at the moment?
yeah. So Instagram, because most of my community is there.
Yeah.
That's the first one. Getting people then onto my email list. I also am posting a lot more on LinkedIn, which is really funny because that's how I think for me, I just was like, oh, they're out there. This feels like a lot of extra effort. Well, I'm like, okay, hold on. Why don't we just repurpose all of this amazing content that you've got?
Yeah.
Start with that. Start with a really easy entry point before you go into these thought leadership pieces. And that's what I've done. I was doing stuff on Threads, but for me, I preferred to kind of use that as like a personal business outlet and not a sales avenue. I get so much from referrals though and happy customers.
Yeah.
And those I would say most of my leads coming through my business have come from, podcast interviews, doing workshops for people. I know if I do a workshop for someone, I don't even sell on the workshop. I always make a sale. And, the last one that I did, I ended up getting someone in my mastermind. I made an $8,000 sale from an hour time commitment.
Love it.
So that has been a really, really good referrer for me. I also have a co-working space. And last year I held an event every month. You came to one
I
of them.
did come to one.
And again, it's not really a sales based event. It's like there is like a 2-minute little call to action. What I do is I follow people up and I look at where everyone is, the questions that they ask, the goals that they have. And sometimes I'll be a bit more proactive. I'll be like, thank you so much for coming to the event. I know you have this business. Why don't we catch up for a coffee and like just talk more about like what you do, and it'd be great to get to know you. Sometimes I might do that with people. Other times, people will just stay in my orbit or they'll go on my email list. So everyone kind of has a bit of a different approach. I don't have this blanket thing where I'm like, great, new person, then do this. And I think that that's come from doing this continually. It's not like I turned up and started selling last month. This has been something I've been doing since 2009. So, doing that, you kind of can work out like the different ways that you want to sell. And sometimes it is, and I think this is where it can put people off. It is a bit of a long game activity.
Yeah.
I saw someone share that, oh, it's going to take someone 7 touch points to buy. And it's really interesting, Suze, because I have had some people that have been on my email list for, I would say 2.5 years. I follow them up regularly. Anytime we have a free event around email marketing, I'll invite them. They've got every freebie and they're still not ready to buy. And I think you're going to have some people that come in, they are so certain and they understand this is for me. I have the budget. I'm ready to invest. But you're also going to have some people that take a little bit longer. And I think sometimes we assume that everyone, if we do a good job, is going to be ready to buy then and there. Sometimes that just isn't the case for a variety of different reasons.
We call them the tortoises and the hares.
Yes.
Yeah, the people that buys like I get clients, it happens a lot during holiday periods as well, where they find the podcast and then they binge me for like a few weeks and then they contact me and they're like, "Let's go," which I
Yeah.
love. I'm like, "Okay, cool." And then, yeah, I've got people who are like, I waited 2 years to work with you, which I kind of regret now, but I'm
Yeah.
here. And I think you've just got to be of the mindset that you're constantly nurturing until they're in a place. And obviously being proactive and calls to action, etc.
Mhm.
But just knowing that you'll have tortoises and you'll have hares and you've got to kind of work with both. But I'd
Yeah.
love to know because you're like the queen of email when I think about
Mhm.
emailing. What's working for you or what's working well from a sales perspective? What
Yeah.
kind of email cadence do you have?
Great question. So, the first thing that I think is really important is you have to have, if someone joins your email list, they have to go through an automation. This is something that I see people think, "Oh, I'll do this later," or they hardly put any effort in. They whack it together. And this is wild to me because this is someone's first experience. I liken it to it's like this is the early stages of dating. And what we want is we want people to understand what you do, how you do it, what your brand is about. And if they unsubscribe, that's right? I want you to be as polarizing or as authentic as you can be. And I'm just trying to remember the stat, but I think it's something like your welcome flow can get up to 320% more revenue compared to a standard campaign, which is just wild. So that for a lot of businesses is completely underutilized real estate. In terms of a good cadence, this comes back to how often you desire to email outside of that flow. So I may have a client and they're like, "Oh, I just want to email once a month." And I'm like, "Okay, hold on. Do it a bit more regularly because, if we look at metrics, right? Like, let's just go with an open rate of 25% and you're emailing once a month. Then that means that someone will probably open and read that email once every 4 months. So we want to give people more of a chance to have an understanding about what you do and how you do it. I usually email my whole list once a week. And then within that list, I have little segments, so groups of subscribers. So this could be people that have downloaded a particular lead magnet or a particular group of clients. So my clients that have Give Good Email, or people that have been on a wait list, or even I'll have like a spicy segment. So people that have been active in, say, like the last 30 days. And I will email a segment probably 1 to 2 times a week. So when you actually look in my email marketing dash, it looks like I'm sending about 3 campaigns a week. Sometimes it's 5. Not everyone gets all of those. And that works really, really quite well for me. So what I think businesses need is they need to have the automations because that is you cloned. That is like if we go back to network marketing, that was what I implemented when I made the sale. And this is also something really, really good for people to have is, I'm attempting to renovate at the moment and look at furniture. And Suze, it is wild to me. The amount of showrooms that I've been in with an appointment, I've gone in there, they've taken my details, I've spent an hour with them. No one follows me up. No, like no one. I'm actually at a point where I'm like, do I say something to these businesses? Because
New
like,
clients? They're
well,
gonna be new clients?
that's thought, and I think I'm really shocked at this because there's so many people that spend a lot of money on like top of funnel marketing. They spend a lot of money on like meta ads, but a lot of people actually have incredible leads. And if you're a physical business, this is people coming in the door. If you're an online business, this is people going onto your email list. And this is something I've started to do now, and that is work a lot more. I was working quite proactively, but I've even taken it to the next level. So what I've done in my inbox is I have different little labels on the side in Gmail. And if I have someone that comes through, I've got a business audit called Hot Business, I will put them in a category to follow up. If I have people that come through on a lead magnet, I'll follow them up. If I have a new business that is coming in on my newsletter, I'll look and see like the end of the handle, like what that domain is. I'll go and follow them on LinkedIn. And this is something that people can do if they have like a small flow of people joining their email list. Like if you have hundreds of people a day, this is really hard to do. But this is something that if you have a nice little steady stream of leads, fantastic, because no one does it. You are doing the proactive reach outs on Instagram, which I love. I'm following the people on LinkedIn. I check in with them either on email or if I know that they follow me on Instagram, I will just shoot them through a direct message. And what I'm doing here is I'm not actually selling, I'm starting the relationship and I'm just checking in and I'm saying, how did you go with it? Please let me know if you have any questions. I've got a podcast, and if you actually want some really good episode recommendations in line with this, I'll send them through. And where that's really helpful is in those episodes that I'm recommending, I'm selling something.
Yeah.
So I know that they're going and they're going to listen to this episode. And in that, if I'm talking about email marketing, I'm going to talk about the fact that I have a program called Give Good Email. So although I'm technically not selling, what they're listening to in that next step, it will sell. And this is something as well that you can do with email marketing in a way to use email a lot more proactively if you're emailing. One of the best things that you can do from a sales perspective is to actually leave stuff out of the email and get people to click to that next step. I have seen some entrepreneurs with fantastic emails. The only downside is they're putting too much information in. So what's happening is they're sending these emails out to their subscribers and, it just say it's a new course that they've released and they've put in, oh, here are the dates, here's when it's starting, here's the price, who's it for. The problem is with that, they've delivered a mini sales page. So they may have people that open the email a few times to check and read, but the only time that they're probably going to click through to the sales page is if they have more questions or they're ready to buy. One of the easiest things that you can do is to just leave the price out of the email and get them to click to the next step. Because then what that's doing, it's categorizing that person as a warm or a hot lead. This is what I do. I add a tag in my software and I go through and I contact every single one of those people. Adore Beauty did something the other day where they sent me an email of all of these new products they had. And guess what? They didn't put the price in. So if I wanted to see, oh, what's this about? How much is it? I have to go and then I have to click through to that sales page. Now, the cool thing is when you do that, especially for e-commerce based businesses, you can do a lot of stuff with email marketing. You can have things called a browse abandoned flows, which you don't even need to put it in your shopping cart. But if you're just on a particular product for a length of time, they'll remarket to you with an email about that. So this is where you can get really strategic to actually help with the sales process. E-commerce will do that and automate it. Service-based businesses, especially if you are a personal brand, this is where you have so much potential to actually go through and follow all of these people up. And as I said, it doesn't need to be, and it's funny, I don't know if you have this where people are like, I don't want to be salesy. And it blows my mind because I'm like, yeah, but you are a salesperson as a business owner. You have to be salesy.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes this is where it's like, you know what, just rip the Band-Aid off. If it's going to feel scary, just do it enough until it starts to feel like second nature.
Yeah. Yeah, you gotta build the muscle, and
Yeah.
I think a lot of people entrepreneurship is so glorified these days, where you can just make $1,000,000 in a month, that I think that people don't realize how much sales is involved.
Yeah.
The fact that they actually need to make an offer and say, "Here's the thing, would you like to buy it?" And everything else that goes with that. But yeah, I love that. And I think that having that combination of the passive, where you've got the email sequence that you've thought through, you're clear on, the stories that you're telling, the offer that might be made at different stages, all the rest of it, and working through that is great. But then being proactive when they click it to go and then follow them up, I think is so important. And I think that because the entrepreneurial space is very noisy and busy right now, when we do get people that are interested in what it is that we do, I do think we have to value it. I think
Mm,
that's been one of the biggest issues that I've seen is I call it lazy marketing, where people just assume that somebody knows that if they want to buy, they'll just buy, that I don't really need to do anything, it'll just happen. And I personally don't think that's the case. I think that you've got to have both, where
mm,
you're being somebody that's active in the process of selling what it is that you have. But the question that I wanted to ask as well from you to kind of wrap up as well is more around money and sales mindset.
mhm.
What's your mindset around pricing? What's your mindset around earning money? I'd love to know. I just love this conversation so much. I,
It's so funny. I love money. And I really love money to a point where people will say it sometimes and you can tell there's a real negative undertone. But I was interviewed on someone else's podcast yesterday and we're talking about money. I said, I love money, but it's actually not my main driver. Like I've gotten to a point now where I'm actually very neutral to it. And I pride myself on the fact that we can have an amazing month. And I am the same if we have a not so amazing month, because I know that I do the work every day and that the results sometimes take time. Like it just takes time to catch up. Right? But I wasn't always like this. I was raised by 2 people that were like, "You have to work hard to make money." And it's real, and a lot of people have that. They have
Yeah.
this, like, correlation between output and labor versus money in the bank. And what I talk a lot to clients is like, if you wanna scale, everyone's talking about scale at the moment, but I'm like, I feel we've got 2 different conversations happening. Because for me, I'm like, scale is how can we like, what would it look like at a very simple level to double the amount that we're making in with half the output, right? And what's really curious when I have this conversation with clients, the stuff that comes up, and they'll be like, "Oh, but I need to work more. I need to do this." And I'm like, "It's not about that. It's about the value and the transformation that you're selling, not about how much you're physically doing with it." And this was a real change for me coming from my Pilates background because I started teaching $10 Pilates classes.
What are
And
they
now
now? Like $35, $45.
yeah, and it's
Yeah.
so wild, and it's like, that's what I started with, it was a $10 product, and, you know, if you want a consulting session with me now, it's $990, and so I've had to do a lot of growth to kind of get to that point from, like, that $10 to the $990. I listened to it's Amanda Francis's book, and she said something, and it was, "People love to pay me." And I love that.
Mhm.
And what I do is anytime I get a sale come through, I look at it and I'm like, "People love to pay me."
I'm gonna steal that. Yeah.
And it's just it's so fun. And what I tell my clients is you just need the tiniest bit of evidence to hold on to that something is true. I think people think that they need to have this like this thing where it's like every day is going to look the same for a year for it to be true, but it's not the case. And one thing that I love to do for any service provider that is moving into a different category of pricing. And this is normally what happens. I'll get a client. I'm like, you are not charging enough. You're not profitable. They'll work out that they're not. And then we have to do something like double their prices. And for a lot of people, that's really scary because they'll be like, I'm going to lose all my clients. And oftentimes, it's actually not the truth of what's happening, it's their thought. And we don't want that to take the wheel and sabotage something that could be amazing. So one of the tasks that I get them to do is, you know, especially if they've had long-term clients and we're having a bit of a price increase, I'm like, go and I want you to look and see how much they've spent in their lifetime with you. And I had this with a client once where she kept talking about the fact that she was really cheap. And it's so funny, but I looked at the prices and I'm like, you're actually not that cheap. Like, I don't know where this is coming from. I think that she was really comparing herself to people in the space. And we looked at one of her retainer clients and they'd spent $50,000 with her. And I said to her, I want you to change what you're saying, that you're not cheap. You have $50,000 clients. And what happened from that is she then had this offer that she wanted to pitch, which was considerably more expensive than what she was selling. But I think it was like maybe $8,000 or something. But that compared to the 50, they're like, oh, I have $50,000 clients. This is $8,000. That's super simple. And she just pitched it with just this amazing conviction that the person bought. So I think like what I love to do and something that's really helped me anytime I'm moving into a new income level is I look in Stripe and I look and see how much people have paid me. And I'm like, why am I stressed about this? I've already made that. And I've already made that so easy and so effortlessly. I didn't even realize that I did it. And I think it's about showing your brain evidence and being really conscious of adding to that evidence bag and not the evidence bag of why this can't work.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's so important. And I think that, I always say to clients when we start coaching calls, I'm like, what are the wins? Like what's
Yeah.
great, what's good, what's been happening? And I don't just do it for the love of it, although it's great. I'm like, we have to train our brain to look for the
Mm.
positive because our brain is always going to say you didn't earn enough. That's like you're too cheap. You've not done this like you were supposed to and then you didn't. Like whatever it is, it's always going to go to the negative of not enough, didn't do enough, didn't earn enough. And I think that the evidence and constantly being the person that's like, today, what were my wins? Like,
Mm.
I had a great podcast episode. I did this, I did that. It was amazing. Great day, Suze. Give yourself a pat on the back. And looking at Stripe, looking at your accounts and saying, I earned 50 grand this month, or I had a client that paid in full 5,000 or 10,000 or
Mm.
whatever. And just really reinforcing that, like you said, I think is so important. But we might do it every now and again. And I think it's about kind of having a more common habit of looking at those sorts of things, like the positive of what we have been able to achieve in our business and what we know we can do again.
Yeah, 100%. I looked at my bank account before and I was like, of course you've done this. You're amazing.
I love it. That's
And that's
so
something
good.
I have clients and they're like, they say to me all the time, they're like, of course, anytime something good happens, I would say, and it's automatic. I didn't realize I do it. I'm like, of course, of course.
Yeah,
And I am not even conscious that I do this. And now I do it to myself. I'm like, of course, anytime something great happens, of
I
course.
love I love that. We're going to take those two things away, of course, when something good happens. And people love to pay me. Yeah, money just comes to me. It's just incredible. I love all of those.
We're going to check our emails and we're going to have a sale after we get off this. I can
Can feel it. I can feel it. So, so good. Amazing. Well, Peter, let's wrap it there. Hey, lovely. Welcome back to the Brand Builders Lab podcast. I am excited for our next interview in the series, which is all about sales and money this month in March. And today I have got the professional babe herself, Peta Saris, who I have known for a couple of years now. She's from Melbourne. Well, she's not from Melbourne, but she lives in Melbourne now. And when I thought about sales, I thought she is somebody that loves to talk about money, loves to talk about sales. And as a business consultant, it is something that she helps her clients do as well. So a quick intro is that Peta is the founder of Professional Babe, the creator of Give Good Email, and the host of everyone's favorite business podcast, The Business Fondle. With 15 years entrepreneurial experience in the bag and all her Virgo wisdom, she's been described as the business oracle and the go-to for meaty, practical, and bold business advisory. So today we are talking all about making more sales in your business. Peta is amazing with email marketing. And one of the things that we're really talking about today is how she has made more sales, connected in a better way and a deeper way with her audience through paying attention to what people do, what they need, what they ask, and being somebody that preempts that and then builds in the right automations, the right systems to be able to anticipate their needs. So I am excited to share this episode with you. We have such a great conversation. So listen, without further ado, let's dive into today's episode. But I love what you've shared, being proactive, really looking at the positives, being somebody that cares. I think that when we're proactive, it is about caring. It's
Yeah.
like I care enough that this person has come to me. Let me start the relationship. Let me start the conversation. Let me go and say hi. I just find it like it's not a wild idea to go and say hello to somebody that has come into your world. Like it's
Exactly.
pretty basic. But listen, for my audience, we'll have all of your links in the show notes, but where can they find you? What's happening?
So you can find me at professionalbabe.com. When you're there, of course, make sure to join my email list. You'll see up the top of my website something called Hot Business, which is a really comprehensive audit you can take. It spits out this beautiful report. It's very fun. I also have a podcast called The Business Fondle, and of course on Instagram because I'm very fun there. It depends. It depends my mood, but it's a very entertaining on stories sometimes, if I don't
Love
say
it.
so myself.
Of course.
Of course.
So good. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on. So much wisdom and things for us to take action on and do, which we're all about. And yeah, hopefully I'll see you for a wine soon somewhere in a fabulous Melbourne bar.
I'm so excited.
All right, lovely. We'll speak to you soon.
Thank you.